Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Bigmark, and just before we get started, I just wanted to thank everyone for tuning in, and if you guys get a chance, please rate the podcast wherever you listen to it. Give us the 5 stars, hit the notification button so you know when the videos are dropping on YouTube and everything. Thank you for watching, as always. And today I'd like to welcome back our special guest, Jack Williams.
Sup, everybody?
Welcome back, brother. Good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah,
round two, baby.
It seems like so long since we had you on because
one of the first,
we recorded our first. It was technically the first ever episode we launched.
Sick.
And but we recorded that like way before we even launched it too, right? So it seems like forever since we had you on.
Yeah, it was kind of the lineup to it all. Yeah, right? Kind of the testing episode.
But right before we started, you just were saying what'd you get on it?
I was on Twitter, and it's all about, if you know, Free Britney.
Free Britney, everybody. And, #Free Brit.
It's judge rules against Britney Spears' father in latest estate court hearing.
So for everyone who doesn't know what's going on, essentially, Britney Spears' father...
allegedly.
I don't know what's happening right now, but I just watched a documentary about this.
Yeah, right.
And it was... so when Britney kind of had her bout with mental health, her family kind of had to step in and essentially look after it's guardianship in Canada, and what's it called down in the States? Conservatorship.
Something like that, yeah.
Anyway, and it basically allows a person or persons to look after an individual who is deemed incompetent or can't look after themselves, right?
Yeah.
And that was a while ago now. Britney was like pretty young. She had like a lot of bad stuff happen in her life, and she had a moment where she kind of flipped out.
Yeah,
and,
everybody remembers like the shaving of the head and all that sort of stuff.
And it became like such a big point of not even controversy. Just she became kind of a laughing stock and a bit of a joke.
Yeah, because media does a thing, right? It like takes it and twists, and then that was all around the time with her and JT splitting up. Excuse me.
Right. And he did that whole video, Cry Me a River.
Yeah,
right?
which was like definitely a shot.
Basically just like a revenge video. About her, and like everyone, I was just listening to a Lil Wayne song, and he was saying like something about like married to that crazy bitch, call me Kevin Federline.
Oh,
I can't remember what the rest of the rhyme is, but it's
they
like,
were together for a bit of time. But
that's just like she was just considered like the classic crazy person, and it was so sad because again in this documentary. It gave so much more context to kind of what was going on. And obviously, like, she was young. She was kind of, like, she was sex symbolized. And, like, it was really wild. Like, some of the questions that she was being asked, wild stuff, like, being so young.
In interviews and such like that.
Boyfriends and, like, weird stuff.
I haven't seen the documentary, but I've heard about it going around. And then, like, the greater topic of, like, what it's kind of highlighting, which is this whole idea of, does Britney Spears have control of like her money?
Right.
What time she tours, when she doesn't tour, things like that.
Right.
And wow, yeah, that's a picture.
Christian Aubin behind the mic.
It's her like shoving an umbrella into the door of a car, and
it's a photographer. So that's a photographer's car,
pic.
And she's just friggin' smashing it with an umbrella.
I can't blame these people.
And it was it was the best photo op. Unfortunately, got her looking mad, enraged. And like the way I took this whole thing is that I feel like Britney was like, you guys only see my superficial, like my face and my appearance and the way I sing in these songs and dance. You have no idea who I am. You make all these assumptions. You think you know who I am. All you want me for is my beauty. I'm going to shave my head. Yeah. And you're not going to want me anymore. Yeah. And I feel like this is the biggest backfire of all time because
it got
just
way
so
more attention.
More.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And like the wrong type of attention. Well,
right?
You know, who knows, but
a
lot of attention to say the least.
I feel like that's the point where she probably got to. And again, she was pretty young. Like, I don't know. Christian, you think you can find out how old she was when she shaved her head? I want to say she was like 26. Like, she wasn't like, not like barely.
Still quite young. And again,
so
even if
2007. 2007. How old was she though? Anyway, I think she was. What year was she born in?
Early 20s.
Anyway, like, she was pretty young when she did this, and it's like,
26.
Right, so she was
1981.
Yeah, so she's an 81. She was 26 when this went down. It's like, man, like, you're pretty young to have all this stuff going on.
Yeah,
like having a high profile like relationship and breakup. Like, remember they were wearing denim, everything together.
Oh,
like they were like the couple.
Yeah.
And then
sick photos,
right,
trippy photos.
And then all of a sudden, all this happens, and I don't even know. They didn't really go into the relationship per se in the documentary, which is totally fine. I heard Justin Timberlake has now come out. We're looking at a picture of the denim, but Justin Timberlake came out with like an apology about this and something else. Oh, about
like
Janet
recently?
Jackson's titty flash too. Yeah, like I'm talking maybe today.
Oh wow.
But he came out saying, like, I didn't read the apology. I literally just saw the headline. But apparently he, like, you know, wrote it down his notes and then posted on Instagram.
Honestly, like, it's not so surprising with
Right.
these, like, it's very unfortunate for a lot of these, like, young stars, if you will. Like, I know it's infamous along,
God
bless you, the, like, Nickelodeon, Disney, you know, all that sort of, like, businesses that when you're young you get into, and it's like, you know, it's similar with Justin Bieber.
Yep.
Like, people were giving him a hard time for a while,
Right.
and now he's come out and he's like, yeah, man, imagine having the whole world hate you.
Man, all those
And it's
kids,
all for, like, how you think and how you create, and then how you, like, try and share your experience, and it's like,
well, all these people
shut up.
too. Yeah, exactly. And all these people too, because these big corporations run their show, we have no idea who they are at all. Like, all these boy band dudes, like all these people who are completely, like, they're probably recruited because they're eager and they're ready to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they have all these different voices in their life, from producers to music execs, record execs, all these people saying you got to do this, this, this. Some of them, I doubt that they're really all that involved in writing the music. Like, they were just performing and dancing, and that still is a skill. But at the same time, it's like your persona and everything is so curated. It's like what you're presenting to the people is so different from probably who you are.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you grow up and you start to go, I don't want to do this anymore.
Everybody
and then
hates
they probably
you
go,
for it.
okay,
Yeah.
because we're not necessarily like evil people. Go and live your life. But then all the truths, or just like who your natural personality is, starts to come out, and people go, this wasn't what I thought you were.
Yeah.
Down, boo, like hiss.
Exactly.
It turns so quickly because people hate to be duped. People hate to think one way and then have something revealed to be the opposite, let alone something different. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And
They signed a deal, bro.
Sure.
And I heard rumors that she's still signed with some sort of deal. So, like, they're like forcing her to post and do like crap.
So this is this whole conservatorship thing.
She's like stuck. Like,
Yeah.
she can't do anything because she signed it, and she just went downhill. But she's still on a term.
Yeah.
So they're like forcing her to do like all these Instagram posts and still try to open up as a brand. And you can, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It's forceful.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that she's not, like, the whole Free Britney thing is all about, like, she doesn't really have legal control over her life, and basically they're thinking her father is, this is the alleged part, is like controlling her making entire
her do it.
Life.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, really, like, let's be totally honest, if you control someone's finances, you essentially control their whole life. Like, there's not a big leap, right?
Well, yeah, you can't do things outside of the house.
At least without going through your dad to get the money to do, and he's going to be like, what do you need the money for? Mm-hmm. Like, even that is enough. That's manipulative enough. Like, it's so funny. There's a Lithuanian, I'm not going to even name the bank, but it's the only one in Hamilton, so you know who the hell you are. But the Lithuanian bank in Hamilton, this is back in like the 80s, My family's Lithuanian, as I've mentioned before, but they went to a straight up Lithuanian bank, credit union in Hamilton, and when you'd go and take a loan, they would ask you what the money's for. And,
oh wow!
And they'd be like, because they're just like nosy, and like, you know, it's like kind of like Eastern European like paranoia, whatever, like, you know, Soviet Union idea where it's like, what are you buying?
Yeah,
like, who do you think you are, coming in buying a car? Like, it's just weird. And it's just a weird cultural thing.
Yeah.
They can't be too flashy, because that was what people got sent to the gulag for, was when you were being all flashy and like buying stuff, and like that's what would send you to Siberia.
Wow.
In like early Soviet Union times.
Yeah.
Straight up. Yeah, not even on COD, bro. Like real life.
Yeah. God damn.
But
yeah,
but
don't
anyway,
buy the flashy cars, people.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is that even Britney thinking like, oh, I have to go and talk to my dad. Like, I don't even want to do this.
Yeah, it's
like
that's still in that like
controlling
childhood.
her life enough to be like, I guess people are saying like, this needs to stop.
Yeah, to enough degree that like, which is again, the problem that I see is like, if she's unfit to control like money and decisions and all this sort of stuff, like why does she have an Instagram, and why is she like booking tour dates and all that sort of stuff, right? So that's where I think a lot of this suspicion, if you will, has come up about her dad, because it's like, if you care, why are you like making her work?
Cause well, if she, so technically she would be his main source of income, so he kind of wants her to keep doing stuff so that he keeps making money, probably.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, she's, again, is she your daughter, or is she like the business now?
I mean,
and at that degree,
see, that's the thing, is that will
lot.
be something sociologically. We'll look back at these parents, same parents who like the toddlers and tiara stuff, like the little girl pageantry parents, and like parents of child actors are like can be a strange type, because number one, you're already deciding to put your child into this when they're too young to necessarily make the decision for themselves or not. You're probably coaxing them. There might be a vicarious nature to your relationship where you're trying to live out some kind of dream through your kid.
Yeah, right.
And in the early beginnings, you do actually, because the child is a minor, you actually get control over their finances, because someone has to. But so therefore, if all of a sudden you're Macaulay Culkin's parents and you have millions of dollars all of a sudden, you're probably going to be like, I'm going to try and keep this position as long as I possibly can.
Keep doing it. Yeah,
right?
Keep doing it. Exactly.
You know, and I'm not going to say that's for all the parents, obviously, right? But there's definitely some for sure that either got into it with ill intentions, or once they saw that they had the golden calf, that they were gonna cash in.
It's unfortunate, because it ruins a lot of art. Like, it ruins a lot of opportunity that, like, you know, could have been. And you look at certain people, like you just mentioned, Macaulay Culkin, like, he's kind of come back to light now, and he's, you know, I love his Joe Rogan podcast and stuff like that, because you know, you do get that sense to like, oh, this is who he is, sort of thing. And it's beyond all the articles and things you hear and whatever over the years. But you know, it steals away a lot of opportunity and like connection for a lot of people. Yeah. And then they live the rest of their lives being like that person that, you know, like Britney is remembered for shaving her head more than she is as like a phenomenal artist. Sure. But once you get into a certain business and like you're a product and everything, priorities get, you know, mixed. Yeah, and I've seen it, you know, fairly briefly in the music biz too, right? Is that you become this commodity. I've seen it even in sports too. I've seen when people become this commodity. Yes. If anything, in sports, it's blatant. I've talked about that before. That whole meat market thing, as we call it, when you have to walk in front of all the scouts, like basically in your underwear, and you go up on a stage in front of all these people, like a room of like 60 people, several scouts from each team, and they'd like list your height and weight and tell you like everything. It's literally like here's this piece of meat. It's 300 pounds. It's 6'7". Do you want it? Do you not want it? Next. Wow. Next. Weird. Next. Yeah. And you're like lined up. Strange, man. Like I didn't experience it personally, but my buddies that went and did it were like, this was weird.
And I remember my coach even saying, like, guys, this is going to be weird, but just be prepared.
But just get through it, and you might be on the team.
Because, like, again, if you're sick, freaking receiver, like linebacker, jacked, like you're D's, cool guy, university, you don't care.
No, you walk in
You have your shirt off every day at the bar. Yeah. You know what I mean? At Seats, you have no drinks. Shirt, right? Yeah. But it's the O-linemen that are like flabby and like, you know, like so
the big fellas.
It's so funny, the amount of insecurity on the offensive line is hilarious. It's just, again, most of us grew up as like fat kids and just like probably got made fun of for it. And but then like continued to grow into like big giant people.
Yeah.
And so then no one really gets in our grill. It's just such a strange thing to be like, because most people are like just a small child like inside a grown person. Like as much as we have a grown like body, the being inside of us like is still
scared.
Is still technically that child as much as it is the present adult, and as much as it is the future old person. Like your spirit, your soul, whatever, resides within a space that doesn't have temporal time that we have time.
Oh, to say the least. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like because we're in 3 dimensions, and the fourth dimension being, or in 4 dimensions, 3 physical dimensions, the fourth dimension being time. We don't really see time as separate. We don't see it as, and then if there are interdimensional beings, they could potentially see time as a physical construct. So if you've ever seen the movie Interstellar, have you ever seen the movie?
No.
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, that's been McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey.
That's been one that I've been meaning to watch, because I keep hearing good things of it.
Everyone should watch it too. Bigmark's movie recommendations.
Yeah.
It's Christopher Nolan joint. I'm a big fan of Christopher Nolan stuff, but they go into a black hole in the movie. It's like all in space. Shit. Interstellar. But it's all in space, and they go inside a black hole, which is like past the event, what's called the event horizon. We're looking at images. See that one in the middle there, Christian? Mm-hmm. Just above there? Yeah. Just over to the left there. That one, yeah. That's the black hole that they do. So that's a pretty... If anyone's wanting to look up Interstellar on Google and look up the black hole.
I've seen that.
Right? So that, in more ways than one, I bet.
Shit,
but that's a black hole, and that's like a pretty scientifically accurate depiction of a black hole as a planet going into it. So theoretically, or not even theoretically, like they have seen, and they've a lot of astronomy is a bit theoretical, but they have observed that there are systems, planetary systems that can't call them solar systems, but they do orbit a black hole instead of a sun.
Oh, right.
So basically, you get a black hole from when a sun blows up.
Yeah.
And it like implodes back on itself and creates a black hole.
Yeah.
Right? So essentially, every star that exists will become a black hole eventually. And potentially every black hole will become a star. I don't know if that's true or not. But because essentially past that, so what they call the event horizon, which is basically, if you think of black hole as like a golf hole, like just a hole that exists, past the lip into the hole would be the event horizon. Like the lip is the event horizon. And they just call that because once you go past that, like no light can escape, no matter can escape. Like if you went through it as a person, what scientists theorize is what you become is spaghettified is the scientific term, where it literally would stretch all your molecules and atoms out as you like get pulled into this. There's just so much gravity, and that's what they say is it's just literal intense immense gravity. They don't know what's on the other side. Maybe they're a wormhole, maybe not. Like according to this, it exists, but it's just the kind of opposite of a star. Essentially, our universe, like again, I don't know much about this. I'm just parroting most of this stuff, but like 90% of the universe, I shouldn't even be throwing out numbers, but majority of our universe is like dark matter and dark energy, which is like the opposite of matter and energy. But it actually most of our universe actually consists of that, and what we consider matter and like the stuff that we see is actually a very small part of what actually makes up the entire universe. And like
that makes sense,
right? And like even more simply, like our cells and our atoms, there's more space in the atom itself, than there is matter. Like the electrons, the space between the electrons and the protons and the neutrons is like crazy. And essentially what scientists and chemists and physics look at atoms, they look at them as like they're basically these graphs of possibility. So it's like this electron could be here, or it could be here, or it could be here. It could be like on the other side of the universe, or it could be here. Like it's a probability chart of where, like, you know, when you think of an atom, you learned in school, and it has like the rings around it.
Yeah.
That's like a Bohr-Rutherford model. That's actually bullshit. And like this other thing are these like valence rings, and it's insane. But essentially, again, they just have a general idea of where an electron is going to be, like at any point. And so there's so much space in between our atoms, not even our own, any atom that exists, right? So what we consider matter is really only a small portion of everything. But anyway, that was a crazy tangent. But in Interstellar, they go into this black hole, and basically once you're in there, it's up to the director, it's up to Christopher Nolan, and he came up with this really cool way of visually, like it was like a visual representation of time. So like,
oh, okay.
So again, I don't want to ruin the story because I think everyone should watch it. But
yeah.
Matthew McConaughey's character basically views and experiences like time as a visual dimension, and it's really, really interesting. And I was listening to this super cool podcast, Aubrey Marcus's podcast. Did you happen to listen to that one? I sent it over. That was one
the Viking,
with the Viking spiritualist.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
Super cool.
I tapped out about halfway through.
Right.
Yeah, very, like, it was, the whole podcast was just, you know, at least what I took was that the depiction of Viking history and culture is like dramatically wrong, in that they've very much presented this like brutish, destructive, dirty, you know, uncivilized, if you will. That's another
the
word.
Viking that we see today.
You know, you see in movies and all that.
And in the show Vikings with the beard and the horned helmet and like drinking all the time. That was like maybe a small portion of them.
That'd be like saying all humans are dirty because you've seen a dirty
essentially,
person.
or like
that's what they were getting at.
Any like group of people that exist somewhere.
Sure.
Like all English people are dirty because you saw one guy. Watch your mouth, mate.
But
anyway,
and he was going on to say that the culture was actually filled with intellect.
Sorry, I should say all English people are clean because I've seen the Queen. I make it positive.
There it is.
All right.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Switch it around.
Yeah.
And so this guy was on. What was his name again? Do you remember?
Geez, it was like Kalen. It was like a very unique first name.
So he was Kalen. Let's go. Was basically explaining that the Viking culture is actually filled with much more like, I guess you could just say culture. Like they're very like poetic people, intellectual people, philosophers. Yeah. They were talking about
those runes.
They weren't dirty people. They liked very like distinct cloth.
Yeah.
You know,
they combed their hair.
Yeah, they were very
like
clean
first
people
to like comb their hair.
It's very interesting.
Take regular baths and stuff.
It just, I don't know. What I took from it was like, because it was a big podcast about taking, I guess, your own power as well. That was a big essence in it. And also just how like depiction of how people and I guess systems as a larger thing are just, they're all ideas, and it can, a lot of the time through history, you're reading maybe the winner, but also maybe the loser of history.
Right.
We never know necessarily what type or when it was written or what point of reference in history we're getting.
Sure.
So then we like, you know, depending on what you find and when you attach yourself to it, you can go through life kind of having a completely, let's say, skewed idea of a certain person, system,
sure.
being, whatever.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it was very interesting to bring up.
Well, again, it's that whole telephone game kind of idea where as things are told through the ages, and again, like, if you were an enemy of these Vikings, you're probably not going to depict them as like the nicest people. You're probably going to say that they're barbarians and they're savage, and if they killed your family, you're not going to be like they're super cool people. They were super clean.
Yeah, probably
like,
not.
You know what I mean? So yeah, but one reason why I did bring that up though is that the second half of the podcast is actually funny. It takes a serious left turn because the guy starts talking that he like encounters these entities that has been talking to him since he was a child, and like telling him to do stuff and telling him how to live his life.
Yeah, I missed that part.
I know, yeah. That's when
I probably tuned out. But
that's what
I
sent it to you before it got to that point.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong. You listen to the meat and potatoes of it, but it takes a crazy turn.
Wow.
But he starts talking about seances and like talking to people from beyond and like black mirrors and stuff and like super occult stuff. It's like really interesting. But he's talking about these whisperers, but he was saying like during seances and stuff, this is apparently a normal occurrence during seances. Things like rattle and thud, like glasses knock over, like tables start to shake, table tipping they call it, I think.
Right.
You mentioned in the podcast. And like to me, I think this is stuff that like shysters would take advantage of. Like if they were gonna, like, this is why I'm unfortunately skeptical about a lot of these I guess you could call them occult practices, is that they're just open to a lot of swindlers.
Right.
It's easy to be a fake psychic. It's
Pick
easy
it up.
to be. It's easy to manipulate people into saying that you're talking to their dead relatives. And honestly, I'm not against it, because if you're easing people's woes,
suffering,
God bless. And if that actually really makes them happier and healthier, unbelievable. It's great.
May work.
God bless. But again, that's why I'm skeptical, because I know that it's open to swindlership, if you can put it that way. But anyway, like, again, the table tipping, pretty easy to set up someone like in the other room friggin' knocking on the door or something, or like, right? Just stuff like that. So
absolutely.
Again, that's the reason why I'm skeptical, and that's all and I am skeptical, that's all. But he was talking, and Aubrey were talking about that if you were, and this happens in Interstellar, that if you're trying to communicate through another dimension or through time or through a temporal barrier or through something, it takes a lot of effort. And that's kind of like cultural. It's in a lot of movies, it's in a lot of stories, that when someone's trying to communicate from the other side, like Ghost, that movie with Swayze, it takes a lot of effort on their part, like energetic effort.
I hear you.
To like do something. And then that's what he was saying about these seances, is that that's what's actually happening in the room, is
they're
that
trying
whoever's
to
with it, that's
get
their
across.
way of saying like, I'm here, or them trying to get whatever that emotion or whatever you want to call it across, ends up being a table rattling, or ends up being a door friggin' knocking or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, could be. Makes sense. I guess that's where like you kind of bring significance for yourself. Like, more now I find like methods to get like present are a lot more down to like the individual, rather than like we all, you find them on yourself.
Right.
So who knows if through a seance you're kind of getting that vibe, and it helps you, like you said, like if that's helping people kind of chill out their sufferings. I mean, if anybody's dabbled with like any psychedelic, they could maybe relate to that degree, in that you experience a certain level of, visual or, emotional experience that, you feel like you've spoken to someone, or you've or you've got somewhere further than, your normal reality. That's for sure. If you take enough.
Right.
But yeah.
I know I've experienced like a sense of, I felt as telepathy. So I was with my buddies. We were on like psilocybin mushrooms, and I felt personally, unfortunately, this is neither confirmed, in fact, potentially denied, But I felt like I could read my buddies' minds. Like I felt like
you were on a different plane.
They were answering I was answering the questions that they were saying out loud, like in my head, and I was answering them, and they like knew I answered.
Would pick it up, right?
But I don't know if I was just speaking and I didn't realize I was speaking.
Yeah, just two in the trip.
I was like I was convinced that for a long time when I would ask my buddy, he wouldn't give me like a straight answer. Like
right.
I'd be like, "Yo, man, this is weird, but like, did you ever feel a sense that we were like you could read my thoughts,
talking without talking?" Yeah.
And he would never be like, "No way," and he would never be like, "Yes."
Because I mean, if you've like again, I've done mushrooms with people as well,
right?
And it's tough to, if you've done them with people, there is a clear sense of like energy that you can like you don't even need a mushroom to feel energy of people. So we all know it exists.
Yeah.
And then of course once you're on something like the mushroom, your whole experience is enhanced to a great degree. And if you're sharing that with someone, of course you're gonna have like after the effect, you may have that like, wait, were we talking the whole time, or were we just so in the trip that we forgot? Or so yeah, for your buddy's response, it doesn't surprise me that he's kind of like, I don't know.
Right.
Like, because he might even have that
kind of worried about admitting that.
Could be.
Was that
very
strange
much
for
could
him
be.
to admit, maybe? Or,
yeah.
Or did he really not understand what I was asking?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I always come down to, man. Like, it is so hard to truly, like, to give someone else, like, exactly what you're thinking.
It's impossible.
It is, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no way that I can, like, there's so many so many points along the way that things can get changed. Again, it's that telephone game, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I might not be able to put it in the right words. You might not be understanding it properly. Even those
like,
two things alone,
even the idea of there being a proper way to understand something being said is like, you know, beyond language and such, like you can get something across, but when you're talking like psychedelics, language can only do so much for you as well.
Gosh, for sure.
Which,
absolutely.
you know, we can understand there, but...
And I think that's where art essentially comes in, right? Is that because art, visual art, music, poetry starts to come in where... I shouldn't necessarily say poetry, but visual art and music comes in where words can't. Poetry comes in because it's using... especially the English language, because there's romantic languages, but like English, especially because there's so many words for things, you can come across something that kind of pretty accurately describes what you're trying to say, but it's gonna take like a whole poem to talk about like one particular thing. English isn't perfect for like, again, really explaining some of the more spiritual things. Really, essentially, English came about you know, when the like clergy, when like Catholicism and the priests that were running the show only spoke Latin, all the scientists and people, the quote unquote Illuminati of the time, spoke English and did everything in English because they knew the priests they couldn't even read it because they thought it was a dirty language. So it was created to talk about science and math.
Okay.
So that's why it's so freaking descriptive.
Right.
And then we started borrowing all these other words from all these other languages too, and started adding, and now we have the modern language of English that has like so many freaking words compared to other languages, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so hard to learn. But again, if you have the proper grasp of the language, you can describe things with so much with pretty decent accuracy. But again, it will still fall short, and I think that's what we're saying, right? Is that that's where a lot of people, whether they've taken a psychedelic or not, whether they've experienced something psychedelic or not, they're trying, when they're an artist, they're trying to bring something from another dimension forward.
Right? Channel something
even again,
across.
even if it's just purely the visual dimension, where you as an artist, everyone who's an artist, are manipulating that to try and send this message or bring this message that words could never describe.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, it's the interesting meet between emotion and language, and like what one confirms the other,
right?
In a sense, like to go deep in a sense, but Yeah, I don't know. I lost my train of thought there because I keep seeing some mushrooms on the telly here.
Christian's just bringing up a mushroom.
Beyond the sense of like telepathy that you have with your friend, like I guess what other things have you felt or encountered, if you will, while on mushrooms?
Yeah, I mean, like the times that I've done them, there was really only one like super revealing time where I saw things that weren't necessary, like I couldn't necessarily chalk up to just like my imagination or like or like inner thoughts I'm having that I'm able to access a little bit better, and I'm just kind of going over that or whatever. That the time that I can remember the most, this happening, I was confronted. I was met by like, I guess, entities, if you want to call them that, but they were like embodied spiritual beings. Was it hard to put into
absolutely
words,
yeah,
but like it was in nature and stuff, and I was looking at a tree and it turned into like a kind of like an old man's face a little bit.
Okay.
And had like a beard, and I considered that to be like Father Time.
Vibey.
Yeah, and he was just like saying, like, giving me like knowledge. I felt, but it was truth, but it wasn't like words. He wasn't like, whatever was happening. It wasn't like, hey, this, and this is the key to life. If you go out and you do this, everything's gonna be okay. Whatever he was saying, it was like reassuring, and it was just like, yes, man. 100%.
Right track. I
totally get it. It
Keep
was just
going.
Like, so yeah, it was reassuring, and it was so not necessarily reinforcing, but again, just the feeling that was coming from that was just like the knowledge of the universe. It was like, this, what I'm telling you now, is what people of all time have been questing to find, and questing to, and people of all time been telling us all through art and symbolism and literature. This is what it's been like. All that knowledge was condensed down into whatever he was. I perceived it as a masculine entity. Whatever he was like saying to me.
Right.
That was super cool. And then I looked down at the river, and it looked like someone poured gas on it, and it was like a rainbow. And then I looked up at the sky, and we were listening to Pink Floyd. Time.
Nice.
And the sky was going like purple, green, red. That was sweet.
And
then at that point I decided to close my eyes.
Yeah,
and
that's where I've got a majority of mine. Like, I did mushrooms recently, about a week ago.
Yeah.
And it was definitely the most intense trip I've ever had.
Okay.
Like, in regards to the actual experience, and then visually definitely was much more vibrant, active. Like, there was a point where I just had a blanket over my head and was like, let's make it as dark as possible, because there's so much going on and to see. And yeah, it's the first time where I've ever had like, and I'm not bringing any sort of like ontological conclusion from this, but like, it's the first time I ever felt like that concept of a entity,
right,
or like other, what's the word, not being or like knowledge source, or like existence, maybe you could say. I don't know. And it's interesting to think, like, I'm always interested why mushrooms can do this for you.
Sure.
And of course, like, they were here well before us, right? And that was one of the things that came through with my trip recently, which was the big energy around being like a channel for things.
Sure.
And like, both, not just like for, the experience and all that, but in general. And that relates back to like what you were saying with the art, which is, people find the opportunity, the courage, what have you, to, try things,
right,
which come with consequences as well. That should be said here. But yeah, sometimes people, like, they go out, they find the courage to do things, and they're met with so much, whether that be like, again, the difference of across knowledge or experiences is sometimes tough, and then they come back with that sometimes overload, and they have no choice.
Sure.
And that's, you know, sometimes what you can feel like after an experience with psilocybin. Yeah. And that's why, you know, I think you would agree that anybody listening, like, psilocybin is not something like casual.
Sure.
It should be something like treated with a lot of like respect and care, because you know, if you go out to like a party and it's your first time doing it, you're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Sure.
Who knows? You might be a tough guy, but
well, everyone listening, go back and listen to the psychedelic pod we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I talk about set and setting. Mm-hmm. I talk about integration, and both those things are basically what you're talking about right now. Is that you want to be in the right setting where you're not surrounded by people you don't know, or you're drinking or other drugs, and you want to be in the right mindset. So you don't want to be sad, or you don't want to be, you know, you don't want to have something bad happen in your life and feel super bummed, because in the simplest terms, whatever you're feeling inside, psychedelics tend to amplify that feeling. Mm-hmm. It's not across the board. It's not guaranteed.
It's not clear cut.
But as a general rule is that if you're feeling bummed, if you take certain psychedelics, you'll feel even more bummed. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you don't want that to happen, you need to know.
There's like a muscle. I've heard it described recently that there's something along, like, okay, some people might not like this person, but Jordan Peterson described an interesting point around the mushroom experience, which was that some people go into trying mushrooms and they might get high, but they don't get the trip.
Right.
And this is where like the caution comes into play, because part of the trip can sometimes mean understanding like the consequence of doing such a like drastic substance. Like it's very strong. It's not like you know, taking your first sip of alcohol, which you might just spit out.
Yep.
And then go, oh, that's not for me, or let's keep going. You know, it takes a bit more.
Right.
But
in alcohol, you can kind of titrate a little bit more. You can take one shot in an hour and see how you feel, and work your way up. Whereas certain and then it's going to go away like in a couple hours. Like at most, you're not going to feel that drunk for a long time. Whereas certain psychedelics like acid might last 24 hours.
It could, yeah.
Like that's way longer than anyone wants to feel that way. Mm-hmm. That's again where people can get really caught up and really have bad experiences.
Yeah, and I think that's like where again that idea of like a muscle. It's very nicely put
100%.
Because it's that kind of again, anyone who's worked out or gone for a walk, you know that like once a muscle kicks in, you know you need to hold something so it kicks in, and that's both. And when you need to let go of it as well, that's important too, because sometimes in these like psychedelic trips, especially with psilocybin, you can be like confronted with something, and if you try and hold on so dear tight to like what you want it to go like, that's where, you know, trouble can sometimes arise for people. So I've heard. I've never really experienced much trouble with it.
Great.
But I will say like this past time was the most challenging.
Yeah.
Because it was just so heavy. It was strong. You know what I mean? And
for sure.
Coming back now, like anyone who doesn't follow me, I'm a painter by Jack Williams.
Check him out.
Instagram, TikTok, all that, many more coming. And so like, again, we've talked about it before. Previous podcasts about like, we find certain ways to start communicating things that you can't put into words. So like, whether that be again, the art, music, even poetry, we kind of cut poetry out of there, but I find poetry is very different.
The only reason I said that because I was about to follow it up with you can't put it into words.
Yeah, absolutely.
Poetry is only words, but no, I totally agree that it is definitely up there with because it can expand so far on such a small point. That's why to me again, they talk about psychedelics being mind expanding. Right, like
I'd say
spiritually expanding. Right, it broadens your horizons, it broadens your perspective. And I think that's the big thing, is that you want to widen that, you want to broaden that view.
Absolutely, I think like one thing that I've taken from them in my experience is like it's always provided me a great point of like, this is one thing I've taken from the recent experience was like point of reference.
Yes,
I keep kind of saying that to myself.
Right.
And it's helpful to kind of like keep at the forefront, meaning like we only have so much point of reference at every point of our lives. Like even right now, we're all sitting in it. Like there's 3 of us in this room.
Right.
We're probably all around the same temperature. We're give or take around the same weights, not like me and you more so than Christian. But even then, like physiologically, we're all kind of running the same way. Whereas like if there was a fly in here,
right,
he's going to see it according to him. Right. So if we were like, you know, wild enough to talk to the fly and be like, what do you see? It's this. And we kind of come to this assumption sometimes that just because you and I can talk about the same similar things, we through the board see them, feel them, hear them all the way across the same. Yeah. And I think, you know, what mushrooms and other kind of harder drugs like that, psychedelics can do is really like tear that apart and be like, you don't even understand what you see. Yeah. So try not to take it all too serious. Right, right. And that's where, you know, we've talked about it before. It's where sometimes the caution needs to be said is because the after effect of that's where the real kind of like work lies. Anybody can get high, but can you use the knowledge, the experience? Like, you know, it's like going on, it's less of a thing now, I think, because people realize it was maybe poorly intended, but you used to hear about those like mission trips and stuff, right? Yeah. People going out to like other countries and building a school or building a library and stuff. And then they'd come back.
Shout out Dreams at St. Mary's in Hamilton. That's what ours was called. It was like Dominican Republic Education Mission something. Okay. Dreams.
Dreams, baby. And so then, you know, they go out, they do that. They get that point of reference. And then they come back with all that like gratitude, right? And then I'm sure a lot of people start to lead that into their lives. Maybe, you know, how they organize their own communities or their diets or whatever sort of thing. And that's sometimes, you know, at least for me, what psychedelics have helped do, which is give that point of reference and then, you know, whether or not you use it afterwards, which I always feel like I do. Right. And then a little bit of time goes by and then I'm catching myself like months later being like, where's all that knowledge? Where's that big thing that I felt like I was finding, right? Yep. And that's why I say there should be that distinction between like getting high and having a trip and then getting like help, therapy, knowledge, you know, where are you like tuning new practices, things like that. Huge.
Yeah. That's huge. I think a lot of people do confuse, because we actually talked about this a lot in the psychedelic podcast, is that there are therapeutic modalities and they're starting to use psychedelics within those a lot more.
Oh yeah.
Where some people are starting to think, oh, if I take this, it's going to be like this wonder drug.
Yeah.
None of these psychedelics, no one is saying that these psychedelics are panaceas, that you're going to take it and it's going to be good for every little bit. Everything, it's going to cure what ails you. That's not necessarily true. Especially in these things that they require some type of guidance, right? Like that's what these therapy sessions are there. There's someone guiding you through these things to actually make breakthroughs. Yeah. Because sometimes unguided,
left to your own
devices, right? You can wander down poor paths, or if you're with other people that are also under the influence, you might all enter this weird echo chamber of bringing each other down these weird rabbit holes. Yes. And it's either going to be great, and you might not learn anything, or it might be really bad and you might learn something, and vice versa, and everything in between. Oh yeah. And right. And that's the thing, is that I think so many people, and it harkens back to your idea that like, is that red that I'm seeing the same color red that you're seeing? Yes. We both agree that that's red if we're not colorblind. Yeah. But is that the same red that you're seeing? And that's the thing, is that so many people just listen to other people, and this goes for me too, just listen to other people, what they're saying, thinking that's going to be exactly how it's going to go for me. Yeah. You have to kind of experience the stuff for yourself. And again, titrate it, try a little bit, see how you react, work your way up. Don't dive in right away. I will say most of this stuff works with there are threshold dosages for some of these things. So like sub doses, for instance, of certain drugs won't work the way that they're intended to. don't let that necessarily turn you off. Just understand that there is a safe route of working your way up to this stuff, and again, it's that muscle. You're not going to go into the bench and throw on 300 pounds right away. If you've never worked out before, you're gonna want to put on just the bar and work your way up. It's the exact same idea for all these drugs. And again, that's just our PSA for today. But yeah, I think again it's that perspective shift where, you know, again that whole analogy of the avalanche. Right?
It's my favorite one.
Right? And I think when people experience what you can experience on psychedelics, that analogy makes more sense.
Have you said that analogy before on here?
I think so. So if I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry, but essentially imagine your mind as a ski hill, and there's the end of the day, and there's all these different runs carved in where everyone's been going down all day. All your thoughts that are the skiers going down the mountain of your mind are carving in these pathways that when you go down them, you can't kind of help but go into these certain grooves. And taking psychedelics is kind of like an avalanche coming down on that ski hill without anybody on there, and just smoothing out everything, and all those runs just get covered over, and now it's a smooth surface. And when you're at the top of the mountain going down, in your thought process, you can choose any path you'd like. And again, and I think this is why it makes so much sense, is because it gets back to what you're saying, is because over time those pathways will be recreated, and you're gonna have to, and that avalanche will have to come again. And that's the thing, is that again, people think that, oh, you just do this once and you're good for the rest of your life. I mean, some people might, because classic Alan Watts, when you hear the call, hang up the phone. Like once you've heard the message, hang up the phone. That's one way to look at it, if you've got the message. But also, we have that tendency to forget. That's what I always say. You forget about all of this stuff that exists, all these feelings of interconnectivity, all these dimensions that potentially exist right in front of our faces. In between you and me could be infinite worlds. Right? Easily. But our brain is set up to ignore all that stuff and just hold us into this dimension and get us through. Because there's a lot of stuff in this dimension that can hurt us and kill us, and not allow us to pass on our DNA and do whatever that is for.
Because at the core of it, like, we are going back to like your earlier reference of like, we're all just children in big bodies sometimes, and like at the core of it, we're all like survival. Like we're all we're actually trying to do is just survive. And that's the trouble with, not trouble, because that's where, again, language, but you know, when you look at certain ways of living and you can just, you know, never consider living that way, that's where these sort of experiences bring that point of reference, widen you out, and just almost allow you to, even if they teach you that you don't have to live like anybody else, you can live according to your own choices, right? And then, you know, again, there's the caution of, you can be the monk and you can chase enlightenment and stuff like that. If you want to become the full monk and go off and completely isolate. But then there's other aspects to it which are important to mention, which is if you want to be, you know, social and involved in the kind of normal world, if you'll say, there's a reintegration process. And that's why I just stress the after work, because like you said, the drug's not going to give you this like open door that anytime you want you can just find those feelings again and emotions. But it might give you, you know, little, like anytime I have an experience, I come out with like slogans, like one-liners that I can just say afterwards. And that's, again, because it's mine.
What are some from your recent trip?
The most recent one was, I wrote notes. I'll read my notes because they're quite strong.
Like you kept mentioning, like frame of reference.
Point of reference is a big one. That's like very stuck in my mind, and that helps kind of catch me in my like drowning in thoughts. Anytime you catch yourself running on thoughts mindlessly and then you suddenly jump out of it, that's what I like say to myself, like point of reference, like you're either jumping back or you're jumping forward. And that's where like concern comes into play. That's where worry, all those sort of things come into play. Whereas if you just are able to kind of find your moment here, point of reference, you'll fly through.
So that's kind of more like you're talking about like present.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like being in the present.
Doing your best to be, because of course that's what I mean by
now.
Power of Now. Eckhart Tolle, baby.
Eckhart Tolle, man. I just listened to his book, man. That was really, really good. I know I shared it to you guys, but
I'm on the waiting list for that. Super good.
Anyone, I listen to most of my audiobooks on Libby. Shout out Libby. Plug us, support us, sponsor us. I know you're the freaking library, but we love you. Anyway, anybody who has a library card, get this app. It's totally free. Audiobooks, it just works like a library. So some you have to wait for, some are just ready to go, and you just get after it. But I listened to Enlightenment Now, Steven Pinker. I listened to The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and it was really interesting, again, about how much we do dwell in the past and present, the past and future, and don't really realize how precious and how perfect the present can be.
Yeah.
Because again, we're just so temporally based, and we're so worried about what things are going to be like in the future, and weighed down so much by our past experiences. Anyway, that just reminded me of that. But
yeah, absolutely.
What are some of your notes there?
So one thing that I was reading, this is all like pretty much just after I've jumped out, if you will.
Cool.
One of them was, this is interesting. If no one's ever done any psychedelics, you know the feeling you have waiting for me to explain it? That like gut feeling, that like emotional kind of like longing. I say to people, like, you know the feeling you have waiting for me to explain it? That's what it can feel like. Like that's what the emotion, that's what the experience all feels like, is that like you kind of already know it, and that's why you're longing for someone to kind of almost tell you again, whether you've done it or you haven't done it, I think.
Yeah, very cool.
Another one is like there's no trouble relying on something, but never be reliant on it.
Cool.
So for me, you know, that has a lot to do with like right now, diet, things like that. Like just, again, I'm lucky for myself that I've been able to get these like little slogans, because I always find afterwards, like, there's so much that happens, right? If I can sum it up in these small little sentences,
right,
then it's like it's almost like the whole experience all in one.
Sure.
And anytime you find you kind of catch yourself going down those same paths of the avalanche or the mountain, right. I just would jump into one of these sayings.
Sure.
Or interestingly enough, beyond these, like the new one is just like snapping my finger, which is very interesting to me, because it's like, it's not the after that's the point. It's the actual like snap all in all, which is the present, because you can't get any closer to that than it is that. And as soon as you're like trying to,
remember we talked about that like the first time we all did it?
I think so.
And we were like, now. I was like trying to explain. I was like, the most important thing is now. No, I mean, now.
Like
now.
Now.
Of now.
Keeps going.
And like the n of n in now. That's it.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah. And
that's what we used to say in football, because you don't want to go on the hut after. You want to go on the of hut.
Yeah.
So when the quarterback's going, you're already moving.
I've never thought of it.
That's how you get. Well, that's like
very cool.
Literally comes down to like the milliseconds, but you're moving anyway. I digress. But yeah, the n of now.
Absolutely, brother.
But none of my coaches thought about that thought about enlightenment when they were saying that when the quarterbacks were screaming. But it's true though. Like again, that the present is perfect. It's true. Like everything we have and need is here right now. Right now, you have it.
Yeah.
But all of our anxieties and depression lies within wanting or longing after something that we don't have, or a goal that we're trying to reach and we're not reaching it or something. Again, not to say that we don't have to have goals. Those are important, but they are a source of anxiety.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's future.
And one thing that I'll say is like, you know, this time coming out of the trip, like that's one thing that was almost like a kick in the butt, is like, yo, you have all these things, these goals, these ideas that you've been thinking about doing.
Yep.
It's like, get on with it.
Yes.
Like the dwelling process on like what it could be. It's like, that's not going to get you anywhere.
Right.
It's also not even up to you.
Right.
Like,
and see, like that is like a healthy form of the ego, I find. Because you need like
that it teaches you
who is telling you
right,
get your button gear.
Exactly.
Probably your ego is there helping you, but in a sense, in the best way possible. Like, again, it's now a guide.
Well, I think that's...
It's a guide because it's real, because it's helping you with something that you're really doing, instead of overrunning and trying to control you into things that aren't necessarily tangible. I think that's where people run into, and they go, oh, your ego overinflates and goes, you're not like this person, or you don't have what this person has. But after you've come into a better relationship with the ego, you realize your ego can only really help you.
Yeah.
And you can't live through someone else's reflection, but the ego will help you guide your own path.
Absolutely.
You can't walk your own path without the ego, but you can't let it lead.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all sometimes the misconception prior to doing psychedelics, which is like, I can speak for myself, like as someone trying to like challenge that ego originally with introducing psychedelics to my life. There was almost that romantic sense or romantic feeling of like getting rid of the ego. And then, once you're deep in a trip, a very strong one, you'll realize like that's all you want. All you want is to be that kind of puny, if you will, like person that has all these, you're humbled in your troubles and your problems. Because when you're seeing like, if you want to be extreme about it, like time and space be designed and stitched, you're like, all I want to actually do is go back and just do some work. Like all that work that I've been scared of doing, it's actually great. It's so rewarding to be able to, for me, myself, like a big thing I realized with my recent experience was in my art, I've done a lot of like preserving recently. I got to this point where, I've been painting for the last like 8 months now, putting it out, and I started getting response for it, right? And then I started not try to make the same things ever, but it was this concept of like, once something's created, how much do you keep developing it, or how much do you like protect it and hold on to it?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we kind of talked about that a little bit the first time you're on the podcast. Definitely. Is that you can polish something, you can keep going back to something and keep adding a couple brush strokes here and there, until you wear. My dad's a blacksmith, and I always talk about you can polish a hole in something. Yeah, absolutely. Right? You can grind down the metal over and over and make sure you want to make it perfect, and then all of a sudden you're not going to have any more material. Right? And a painting, and my pops told me this, but a painter, like a painter's painting is never done. No. Because there's always something else that they could do, but if they don't put that out, then what's the point of even creating the painting if it's not for people to experience and see? What's the point of even starting it? Well, that's where that like channel kind of energy and reference comes into play, which is I've kind of released myself from the end product now. Cool. Which is more like I get into it, I create it, and then whether it's good or not is not really up to me anymore, because that's where I'm just gonna fight with my ego, because it can always be better, and that's you're 100% right with like an artist's like a painter's canvas is never finished. It just becomes like, I said this to Christian recently, like I've not done multiple paintings, I've only done one. It's just changed like canvas every time. So cool. You know what I mean? It's just the brush Zappa used to say comes off at the end and then drops to the next one, and then it continues and continues. And Zappa used to say, I've never implied that my musical works are not all part of the same thing. Yeah, brilliant. Which is so cool. So sick. And Neil Young is kind of taught. I think there's a concert where Neil Young is like, it's all one song. It's all just one song. That's great. So cool. But that's the thing is, and some people can't handle that either. Right. And well, again, look at like, again, not to just keep harping on music, but like you look at like suites, like so music's where there's like, it's one song, but like within the song there's different feels and keys, and it's like composed of like, again, just look at an opera. If you were to look at an opera as one song, it has all these different movements and feelings and all these different things, but it's all telling this one story, right? Yeah, right. And I think visual art can be a snapshot, right? Tends to be a snapshot, obviously, because the essence of it's not moving. It's a snapshot of some type of story.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of sculptures like that, right? Where, you look at a lot of like Michelangelo stuff and Bernini, it's like, it's a story of, it's telling a story through the sculpture. But again, it can only be a snapshot. So, as a visual artist, you were working with like the tiniest slice of like an idea.
Yeah. Well,
but it's expanding it. Like, I'm not saying it as in a small way, right?
Oh no, absolutely not.
You're expanding on this such a small slice of life, right? Versus like a film, which could be over an hour or so.
Right.
Expanding, showing all these different things to really drive home a point.
Lead you up to
or like
something.
A song or a story. Literature is probably the biggest, right? Because you can write this long story like Moby Dick just to say the battle is like within that we all are searching for. This is a bit of Jordan Peterson, but the Leviathan looms under the water in the unconscious depths of our psyche. There's a Leviathan of pure power that we are all potentially afraid of, that we don't want to confront, but we want to tame it, because we know if we can control the power that resides within us, we can achieve great things.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, that power terrifies us
because it's hard to handle. That's
Absolutely.
The thing. And
because it can devour us.
Yeah.
Like the Leviathan, right?
Yeah.
There's the Leviathan of the deep and the behemoth of the land, and both those things can utterly destroy us. But if we become masters of those things, then we can become all powerful. But again, that simultaneously excites us and terrifies us.
Absolutely. I had a moment like that recently with the experience, which was like, it was one of the notes, which was like the difference between us and the greats is a matter of mindset, which can be just taken or like learnt through consistent action. And like, I think it there's something to be said for that, and why you are able to come out of an experience like that. And that's where those conversations around entities and other realms and things are exciting, because it opens up the possibility that this simple idea of who you thought you were or who you think you could be, like it's so limited, and don't get caught up in that limited point of reference to keep putting it across.
Absolutely.
But and like, because anyone, I'm sure you've heard that line, which is like, if anyone looks like you has done it, you can do it. And I think we get into, because we're all very egotistic people, we get into this feeling of like, oh, so if they're from the same country as I am, or from the same like ethnic background as I am, it's like, no, the point of that is like, you're a human, other humans have done it, just try. You know what I mean? And you never want to like, sometimes that's hard for people to say, because real life problems are tough, right? If you're still trying to just like take care of bills and stuff, you're probably not going to be thinking about like your God essence and that childhood dream that you never actually did. So it can be tough for people to consider these ideas later on in life, and even earlier, because if you've been drilled this kind of narrative, which is there for various reasons, sometimes it's for your safety, and sometimes the consideration comes up that it's full of shit, that these are rules and maybe laws around. It's more a topic now as psychedelic research is brought up and stuff, that maybe all of these sort of things that were here well before us are actually helpful. We just have demonized like using them because somebody did them too much.
Well, and I also think that in our history, potentially anyway, more people than not were responsible for, again, raising families, working, especially before the Industrial Revolution. There were so many labor people that were literally, and today even laborers, tradesmen, garbage, like everybody that exists in this economy is important. But all these people are working hard to make this happen. It's not like an easy job where you have time to like think about things. It's like, and then you got to go home, and then there were again other times in history where famines or war or other different things that were like, all right, we can't be thinking about like philosophy, where in ancient times there was only a few people that were even able to philosophize and learn to read and like learn to do all this stuff. But now we exist in a point of history where more people are educated, more people have jobs where it's not labor intensive, where it's going to waste all their physical energy. There's mentally taxing jobs still, but again, it's not, and it shouldn't be. In our culture, it's a little bit more glamorous to be working hard all the time. But it's not necessarily a human aspect, but other cultures are more like laid back, like let's chill. But work still has to get done. And while some of that work gets done and you get so focused on that work, you're not necessarily thinking of the big picture stuff. But I think what's essentially happening is more and more people are able to think of these big picture things. And I think that is where you're seeing these big consciousness shifts. Is the fact that more and more people are thinking this, have time to think about this stuff, or have the ability to think about this stuff. And then that's actually what is as a collective unconscious, as the morphic resonance grows in this way, that we're looking more to questioning all these practices and all these norms that are set up for an old
way of living. Yeah, absolutely.
Now we're experiencing a lot of friction and a lot of resistance, is because we don't actually know, because that's not congruent with like our thoughts and feelings and how we want to expand our minds, and isn't congruent with the way culture and society is run.
Yeah, right. There was a different point to it all, which I think, like, at least for me, I felt moments of it over this past year with like COVID, and I don't want to dive too far into COVID, because we did last time, I think. But, you know, I do think that this past year or so has been one of those times, because it's kind of what you're saying. Like it sat everybody down, or a lot of people, you know, there was a lot of people that just kept on going, and God bless. But there were a lot of other people that I don't think ever in their life they had ever been like slowed down or maybe stopped, sat down and been like, are you okay? Are you thinking about your family and your friends and that, you know, those other things you want to do in life? And that doesn't even have to be like the grand business or anything, but it can be like reading. You know what I mean? It just, the slowing people down sort of thing enough that they can grasp some of their nuance and not keep holding on to these like identities that, are they yours? Are they what you were told to be, sort of thing? And
is it curated by all the different things you're seeing on social media? Are you just because you're voting with every click? Are you just being shown what you want to see? Like, again, we talk about expanding the mind. We talk about expanding that point of reference, you know, into thinking, because it harkens back to something that I've said a lot, where our culture, as a Western culture at least, is continuously moving towards this more individualistic nature. I mean, if you look at you know, East Asian cultures and our cultures, we have this individualistic culture versus their collective culture, collectivist, where they don't really have an I, where we do. Like that, I think that dichotomy probably existed in less of a binary way, but now we just each system is just slowly fading to the extremes, where the collective cultures now are they're so like automaton. We're not like, we are not I am, and they don't even think about their individual rights, and they're being potentially taken advantage of because of that. And then our side has become so freaking individualistic and so customized and so honed, sharpened into this
everything is mine and only mine
point of reference in this giant thing, where meanwhile we're all part of this one tapestry, and we perceive like, oh, look, I got my Jordans that are my color. I went on Nike ID.
I
No
put
one
a
else has
star.
these colors, bro.
Yeah.
Yo, no one else has these colors. Like, no one else has this. This is my shit. And then all of a sudden, you hit a rough patch, and you go, hey, has anyone else ever felt like this? And before you even ask that question, you answer it in your head as no, because I'm me. No one else is me. Right. Meanwhile, everyone is you, and you are everyone else, and everyone's experiencing a part of what you're feeling because they're human. Yeah,
and well, it's interesting to think of like how far that individual, identity aspect has come just so far into our daily lives. Like Shane Moss, you come across him before?
I just listened to him on Duncan Trussell. Love it.
Brilliant.
Not the most recent one, but
one of the old ones?
The second latest one.
Okay.
Heard him on a few with Duncan Trussell. Duncan Trussell Family Hour, shout out.
Great podcast.
Unbelievable.
Get us on, Duncan.
Yeah, bro.
I want to get that knowledge. But yeah, in the one that I listened to, Shane brought up an interesting point, which was like, we've got to the point now where we like demonize these substances, and they're put in that label of like drugs, but then no one's paying attention to like social media to the same degree. And an analogy he was giving was like, no one's tested like what dosage of Instagram goes well with Snapchat. And I thought that was hilarious.
For sure.
Because I was like, these are things that we just mindlessly use. Like I've caught myself multiple times just being like on it and scrolling and then being like, I'm not looking at it. Like I'm looking for something more. And I think it'll be on this little app.
My worst thing is I'm just trying to get to that where it says like you've come to the end, that little check mark. And it says like view older posts.
Really?
I'm just trying to get to that.
I don't even think I've seen that.
Never seen that? It's like
it'll tell you like you're
I've
at the end.
I've seen all the new posts for that moment on Instagram. You don't get that? Maybe it's a setting.
Is this like, you mean on your like personal like
thing.
Your people you're following, right?
Yeah, like on the not Discover.
I'm always in Discovery. I'm never really on my like following
on my home
anymore.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
See, I always start on home.
See, very interesting.
Right.
We all
I always start on home, and I look at like whatever the people I follow are posting, and we know Instagram isn't chronological anymore, so sometimes you have to like dig to actually see people's posts.
Yeah.
Because they show you like whatever they want to show you first. And when I'm scrolling through there, it'll say like that's it right now. Like there's nothing else new. I think that's what it says. Like that's all right now.
You're all caught up or something.
Yeah, you're all caught up, 100%. And then it'll say view older posts, and I can click that, and then it'll show me everything that's been on my homepage. Wow. So if I like missed it, didn't see it, like it'll take it off the homepage.
That's so interesting.
But past that point, if you keep scrolling past that point, funny enough, it like is a new Discover. It is basically the Discover page past that point of no return.
Past the point.
Which again is interesting. I guess it just goes to show you how different people even use the apps.
Oh yeah, so much.
Right, and I've compared
feed is the same
feeds to other people's and been like so different.
Oh yeah,
and been like I always ask my friends like, hey, have you been seeing XYZ, whatever I happen to be looking at that week? Because sometimes the answer is no, because they just doesn't pop up in their feed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
right?
I've had instances like that where I've brought up something, and you try not to be like too proxy confirmed, where like I like hearing that I'm getting things different than other people, and they're getting a bit different than me, because there's something there.
But what that unfortunately only confirms is that it's taking us further and further away from each other. Because essentially, I'm looking at those pictures thinking this is what everyone's seeing.
Right.
But it's not the case.
Yeah.
Clearly not the case.
Yeah, that's true. That's interesting.
And that's why I'm saying that it's twisted. That's how it's twisted into thinking, oh, these social networks are bringing everyone together because it's like the news again, the Bill Hicks, the news.
The news.
It's used to be the same mofo for the whole country was the anchor, and he was telling you the news, and people from PEI to Victoria Island were like hearing the same thing.
This is what happened in Ottawa.
They were hearing the exact same thing. It wasn't even like local anchors like we have now. It was like one, friggin' Peter Mansbridge dude saying like, this is a CBC and this is what's happening. But now there's so much different media, and we look at social media like it's the news, because there is news on there, and real news companies have gotten into using social media, so there is real news in there, but it's also dispersed with fake news and misinformation and disinformation,
advertisements,
and all kinds of crazy stuff, and advertisements, and they're trying to sell you stuff on top of all this. But most people still look at that as their main news source. I will admit, it is my main news source.
Oh, it's mine for sure.
Like, I don't go and like I'll verify things like on CNN, and not even be like, and I'll just, the only verification is the fact that it's also there.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like, oh, these guys are a credible news source. It's like, oh, these guys aren't going to just pick up bogus stuff.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they might as well. Like, that's the other thing, is that throughout history, even at those times where we were getting our media input from one source or one newspaper or one radio station, it was still controlled by somebody. You know, you look at all that William Randolph Hearst stuff about like all the disinformation about marijuana, that all came through the news at the time.
Right.
And up until really recently, all that stuff was just perpetuated, and it was perpetuated with and it was the same thing. Like, all this advertising stuff ain't new. Like,
no.
There was the same thing on radio stations. Like, how do you think a radio station makes money?
Absolutely.
It's always been like that.
All the in-between, but it's almost like you just drown it. And I think we do that with a lot.
Because it starts with this virtuous idea of, we need to give the radio to everybody. Everybody should get the radio for free. All you have to do is have a radio, and you should be able to get all these stations, because it's a right, and people deserve music. People deserve the like other things that come through the radio, aka the news and like other programming.
Yeah.
And that's based on the whole idea of man cannot survive on bread alone, that we do need art, and we need music,
social,
and we need social interactions more so to actually survive. So that's the virtuous, beautiful fountain, if you will, the fountainhead of the idea of radio and information and spreading information to people.
Yeah.
But within that is this insidious nature of like, all right, how are we going to take advantage of people?
Money, control.
Because there's people that are with nefarious ideas going, hey, we can get at all these people at once if we just change the way things work. And who knows if it happens, again, insidiously from the beginning and someone infiltrates, or you just get into the position and you go, hey, I'm the only guy that's telling everyone the news. I can say whatever I want. And this guy's pissing me off. I'm going to say that he's a goof.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to be like,
get him
hey,
taken care of. Yeah.
Right? Like, it's
all kind of living in our own echo chamber.
Ayn Rand, that's the way I look at Ayn Rand's authorship, and I'm sorry if I offend anyone the way I look at this, but the way I look at Ayn Rand, not to boil it down and diminish it, but I look at her stories as normal day happenings, normal life happenings of like rich and famous people, like uber powerful people. So like Atlas Shrugged is like all like the people who like run the railroads in America. Like they build them and like run them. Like they like control the entire things, and it's like the interpersonal relationships between those people.
Interesting.
So when I'm pissed off at you, like you're another railroad tycoon or something.
Sure.
I'm like rerouting major railroads and changing people's lives because I'm pissed at you. Like my small actions, my day-to-day actions affect so many people under me that it's just like, but it's coming from this like petty thing. Like the fountainhead is all about this one architect who's like, fuck everybody, I want to do my own thing.
Right.
And he ends up being like a powerful architect, like building these large like surveys and buildings and cities essentially. And he's like fucking blows one up, like shit like that, like, and it's destroying people's lives, but it's all in the microcosm of that person's life. It's not mundane, but it's just like, that's what happens in life. But because I'm a powerful person, my actions have powerful consequences. So anyway, this is, I think, some of the stuff that we consider so insidious and evil is really just like the egotistical happenings of powerful people. They're letting their ego run the show, and it just so happens that it's trickling down and affecting thousands, millions of people.
Yeah, I mean that's where those like conspiracy.
Like Bezos in this whole thing.
Oh
with
yeah.
the guy from Saudi Arabia.
Wait, what? Oh, I thought you meant about him resigning.
What's that one guy?
I don't know.
The guy from Saudi Arabia. Look him up. Pull that shit up.
The guy from Saudi Arabia.
Like the crown prince.
Bezos, crown prince. I don't know. I thought you meant about him resigning.
It's like MSP or something. I don't know what his... Bezos. Anyway, there's like the crown prince of Saudi Arabia or whatever. There's like all this beef going down because they like killed one of their journalists in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
So basically, like this journalist was just like murdered. Everyone knows he's murdered. There was a documentary about it. Yeah. And everyone's like, "What are we doing with Saudi? You can't just be killing your journalists.
Yeah.
This is not what we do.
Yeah.
In first world countries in the world, we should allow these people to be able to look up The Dissident. That's the documentary. And like we should be able to have free speech and journalistic integrity, blah 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 blah. Anyway, they kill this journalist, and then Bezos was supposed to have this big huge deal with Saudi Arabia or something like that, and he pulled out of it because he didn't want to have to
deal with that,
to link his company with someone who's killing journalists. Yeah. And this prince released all these texts and all this like stuff because one of the text messages between Bezos and this crown prince like had like encryption in it and like put spyware on Bezos's device. And then as soon as Bezos pulled out, the prince is like, I'm putting you on blast, guy, and just like released all this stuff. This is like mad recent.
Damn. So they put spyware
on Bezos's stuff. Like the prince himself put Bezos's like tapped Bezos's phone. Damn. And is now like releasing all these text messages and stuff. I don't know what the content of the messages are, but like this is what, did you find anything? This is what's going on. Like it's interesting. How did we get here again?
Bezos protection, like just when people get up to that certain degree of power, how they can kind of shape society in the way they want.
Well, again, it's the big happenings of powerful people, right? Like that's what we were talking about, right? So, oh my bad. Yeah, Saudi Arabia. Yeah, so Icarus, that's a great documentary. The guy who did Icarus, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS. Wasn't casting. So yeah, I was like, Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So that's MBS, they call him. MBS. Anyway, so this guy killed, and he was like a New York Times reporter. Washington Post journalist was murdered. Damn. So like he was like working for an American company. Anyway, so
UN calls for investigation.
The UN's calling for investigation, and MBS basically put Bezos on blast. And I don't know exactly what he said, but somehow the Saudis tapped Bezos's phone. And it's like billionaires talking to each other, like that's why they're chatting. But
of course. Right? There's probably some sus shit in that text.
Rich. Yeah, who knows? Like, hey, how many helicopters do you have on your yacht or whatever?
No,
they talk about.
More like, yo, let's take this island.
Yeah, it's like, yo, let's like disrupt this government.
That's like a very interesting thought. It's like when you get to that degree of, that's what I'm saying. Like just because you can't help but think you're still working on the good, right? Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's when the ego runs the show. It just convinces you that
you're
this
doing
is just day in, day out.
This is the right thing. Who cares?
You make decisions. You're the prince of this place, of this line on the map that we invented. You're the freaking prince because you were born and God said whatever. And
your decree will last.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's real. Do whatever you want. Like again, it's like your ego has run amok. Where again, capitalism, all this stuff just rewards egotistic behavior. Yeah. So it only makes sense for these people's ego to be absolutely haywire, and they just don't even know right from left, and they're just like making decisions totally based on what their ego's saying, right? And it's just like then you get to this point where then all of a sudden then all of a sudden there's mad beef going on between these super powerful people, and it's affecting countries. People are dying, even on the smallest level. One guy has been killed already, and this guy just thinks it's all good. Like, no one's doing anything about it.
Yeah, so I guess it says they were speaking over WhatsApp.
True.
When an unsolicited file was sent, according to sources who spoke to the Guardian.
So that file, what they think was the spyware from the Saudis to Bezos when they were just like chatting or whatever. Like, literally, it was just like, "Yo, what up, bro? Like, what are you saying?" And then whoop, this also came.
He's kind of taking it
out. I airdropped you a virus.
It's taken away from the prince, but what do you think about Bezos stepping down from the head of Amazon?
I don't know. I
mean,
maybe it's better because he's obviously, again, an individual that's extremely driven.
Yeah.
And,
got more
there's
important
maybe
things to
a
be
lot
doing.
of his decision making along the ways, again, fit a model where it wasn't the biggest company in the world.
Yeah.
Maybe his decision making worked better when he was doing it out of his garage and, when he was doing it, when he was small potatoes. But then all of a sudden, in a fairly short time, he became one of the biggest countries and one of the most richest people in the world.
Yeah.
And then he kind of hoped, maybe he went, all right, I made it, time to chill. Or he looked at Muskie, because that's what Musk does. That's what Elon Musk does. He'll be like, all right, I'm out. I made this company. Now I'm out ski on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Which is sick. But
he gets it going and then
if
delegates.
Bezos is going to be like Lex Luthor, I have an issue. Like, if he wants
to
be like an evil.
Some people have suggested the idea that he's going to run for president.
Wow.
And that's why he's stepping down.
That's why he's stepping down.
Getting away from, stepping off Amazon. I know, he's still involved. Like, he's stepping down as the CEO, but he's still going to be, chairman, something like that.
Yeah. He's going to be on the board.
Yeah, he'll be on the board for sure.
Yeah. So, see,
transition to executive chairman of the Amazon board.
Because, after Steve Jobs died and Apple changed, it who knows what it would have been like if Jobs was still involved.
Yeah.
If that's going to be if those are even comparable, you know what I mean?
Maybe. Probably not. Sorry.
But in the sense that, who knows where the company is going to go from here, right? Now that he is still involved with it, I don't know. I always wonder how much these guys really have to do with the day-to-day. Like, at this point,
I do wonder that. Like, sometimes I like to think none. Yeah. I think sometimes a similar way to
even it is a board. It isn't just one person.
I even think about it with the politicians sometimes. Sure. I'm like, you're not really doing much about my life, but they're doing quite a bit. And
also, it's not like Trudeau is making a lot of these decisions personally, thinking it all through. He has cabinets and senators and all these people being like this, that, and this. And then he happens to be the head, because we need to have one person running the show, because there's sometimes our decisions that have to come down to one person making them, but most of the decisions made as a country are made as a small group, at least.
Imagine Amazon started doing psychedelic trip venues and shit. Hey, put on this VR goggle, dude, and take 5 grams of mushrooms, literally be and I'll show you Satori.
Right. It could literally be Amazon. Right? It could be Amazon, Apple, and Coke. Those are the 3 companies that exist. Period. Whoa, they have everything for you. You get all your stuff from Amazon, you get all your food from Coke, and you get all your electronics from friggin' Apple.
Whoa.
It's pretty close to that already.
Wow.
And that's the dystopian, or whatever you want to look at it, the future. That every move that's being made with Amazon buying things, Disney buying everybody.
Yeah.
They're gonna, or Disney, maybe it won't be Apple, it might be Disney, but Disney's gonna be up in there.
Yeah. Apple just bought I think it was invested $1 billion or something into Bitcoin.
Man, I don't know shit about
Apple.
Bitcoin, and I'm
so
scared.
It's gonna soon you're gonna have cryptocurrency on your Apple Wallet and stuff like that.
I'm shook because I don't know nothing about that crypto stuff, bro.
Gotta catch up.
Gee, I don't know. I would say I personally think it's worth having a bit of attention to it. I don't, it's so wild and
but
early,
like if it
not
changes
early,
over to become the currency, like how like is all these people are going to be left in the dust?
Maybe. I don't know.
Like billions and billions of people, because like it's
well, I mean,
it's like it's a small group of people. Like if a company is buying, there's only a finite amount of these bitcoins. If one company is able to buy and own majority shares, how is that going to be? How can that possibly be like our world currency?
Invested one,
because you could still use the money as a as like a value to the one credit. So like that credit would just be worth more. So you would have to just use the money that you would have to make up for that one credit and build up for that one credit in a sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like there would just be held a higher value on that credit than it would be on the cash that's still left behind. It's still valuable.
Right.
Because even
used differently.
But wouldn't we have to just?
Because even right
to
now,
like switch over like completely, like
just as you would put money in your bank to get it on your online bank account.
But that's what I mean. Like all the dollars that exist now would become Bitcoin.
No.
Probably
not. I don't think it would necessarily become the new normal. It may just be more, maybe like Christians kind of speaking, of like the more common. So like maybe, I don't know if this is accurate, but the difference between using cash or digital money, you know what I mean? Like you can decide to just live on cash, but there's also this like, again, it's tough with the dollar though, so I don't know where that splits. But
because our dollar isn't backed by anything, so that's what I do know about the difference between crypto and our currency right now is that crypto isn't still. It's backed by these blockchain things, like it's actually being mined. Like
it's being created,
right?
Yeah,
but it's a tangible source, and it's finite.
It still holds value.
Yeah,
it's finite.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
So there's only like a certain amount of Bitcoin
that will be able to be mined. Eventually, there will be the last Bitcoin,
and it
mined.
Exponentially gets harder to do, which is why it increases the value. So right now, a Bitcoin is $50,000 or something like that. By the time the last Bitcoin is made, it's possible that Bitcoin could be $1 billion in value. Mm-hmm. And that's why, although there's a finite amount, the way in which we value it might be able to get it split. Like right now, you don't have to buy a full Bitcoin, right? Sure. Obviously. You can just buy like a portion of it.
Sure.
So, yeah, I don't know.
But then there's this Dogecoin.
There's so many. There's thousands.
That like
Elon
was all about.
So that's I guess it's like a meme. It's a joke. Like it's not.
But see, this is what's muddying the waters. I fear.
It can 100%, but it's also like as much as it's a joke, it's a meme. It's an interest. Like Duncan, I think mentioned this in one of the things. Is like at what point does a meme become a messiah?
Right. And
like at what point do we just kind of start accepting like these new leads of thought and structure? And to bring it back around to the crypto thing of like, although it's a joke, it's made people millions of dollars probably.
Sure.
Because of easily like what someone, like again, Elon tweeted something and it jumped in price. And
do you know how they, like, what are they mining it from? It's just like algorithms.
So computers, like there's like, super computers, for lack of a better way of understanding, are, lined up and they're going through, encryption after encryption, algorithm after algorithm of solving problems. What problems? That's tough. Like that's kind of where. So mining is painstaking because of fast miners. So I don't know. It's kind of like. It's tough to really say what the problem is. I guess it would be.
Receive Bitcoin as a reward for completing blocks of verified transactions, which are added to the blockchain.
Right, so completing blocks of verified transactions. So right there, completing blocks of verified transactions, that would be where the exchange of things comes into play. So, for instance, when I buy a certain cryptocurrency, it's not automatic. It goes through the blockchain and gets confirmed. And maybe that's kind of what this is talking about. Like as those transactions of exchange are confirmed through the blockchain, it's able to make more.
And what's a blockchain?
Bruh, right?
Like it sounds like
tough.
this is somehow getting money off of transactions that are already occurring. Or are those like talking about
it feels
getting rewards
to me
off transactions, completed transactions.
The primary draw for mining is the prospect of being rewarded with Bitcoin. That said, you certainly don't have to be a miner to own cryptocurrency. You can buy cryptocurrency. You can either earn it by shopping platform, Steam it. The Bitcoin reward that miners receive is an incentive that motivates people to assist in the primary purpose of mining, to legitimize and monitor Bitcoin transactions, ensuring their validity. These responsibilities are spread among users across the world. Bitcoin is decentralized. Do not rely on any central authority like bank. So, yeah.
So that part I get, and I like the fact that it's decentralized. But again, like I'm still pretty lost with this description because it sounds like it's just not saying anything. It's just saying,
it's a lot.
You get Bitcoin by mining Bitcoin, and you mine Bitcoin by mining Bitcoin. Like it doesn't make sense to me. But I'm stupid.
It's not even stupid. It's just not delve into it enough. And even myself, like I don't really know much about it, but I'm very interested in it. It exposed me to like NFT, which is in the cryptocurrency sense of things called a non-fungible token. So like Bitcoin is fungible, meaning there's multiple, or there's many of them, it means, whereas like an NFT is like a one of one. So the way that I've been exposed to it is like art. So that you can create NFT art. So it's like a one of one piece.
Okay.
Or alternatively, you could create like imagine like a little keychain, digital keychain.
Sure.
That's attached to like a physical canvas. When I sell you a canvas, I also sell you the NFT, which is the proof of ownership. But along with that NFT, I can involve a variety of smart contracts with it. Cool. Meaning like when I sell it to you, I also include a 20% commission fee that anytime you sell it after me, I get 20% of that cost. So, let's say I sell a painting right now for 100, and then in 25 years, somebody sells it for 200 because, my value's going up. Yeah. I would get 20% of that, which is very, very interesting.
That's huge, and I've heard that for artists and musicians too. Is that's a one big thing that this stuff can help. And really, at the end of the day.
So, and sorry to cut you off here. I think what a lot of this is also doing on the larger scale is imagine that security. You're not relying on the bank. You're not relying on the gallery. You're not relying on the government. You're relying on the honesty and confirmation of people.
Right.
And that's where, you can bring in the skepticism of people are always going to go chase the ego. It's all about the money, control, whatever. Maybe. Who knows? The greater possibility of it is like, for me, it could be art. But for, that single mother that has 2 kids, it could be like the rent agreement. And instead of just having to deal with like, the shitty guy in locally that is running the rental area, she'll have like this smart contract and he can't change it. She can't change it because it's contracted across all of the blockchain sort of thing.
And that's what I agree with. And again, if it
creates
more security,
voting, it goes to your money security, it goes to entertainment. Like there's so much to it, and whether or not it's
I like the fact that it's
next
decentralized
thing,
and everything too, but I also worry because it's so technology based that it's so susceptible to.
Oh yeah,
literally
all it takes
EMP,
is
like an electromagnetic pulse could fry all these things, and then we're done ski. And also, my biggest issue with the banking system is that we've made up all these numbers essentially at this point. Once we got off the gold standard, anything we just make it up, and that's what I worry about crypto. Is like, yes, it's mined, and yes, there's effort and stuff being put in to actually get them, but it's coming from a system that's completely man-made.
Right.
We're mining the internet. It's not like we're mining some ethereal
That's funny.
Like right, we're mining like an oil reserve that we can't see but we know exists. We're mining this thing that we've created. but yet we're saying, oh, it's so much more secure, and it's like, you know, this is where I can't.
That's where we maybe jump back into that other topic of like how much further than us does it go, and like, you know, is this our current point of reference to a system that already exists?
Sure.
And maybe, you know, again, these are just the fun ideas you can do with it, but
right.
It's interesting, and I don't really understand anything about it, to be honest. I'm playing with it.
Hey, anyone out there who knows about Bitcoin, let us know.
Come on, yeah,
Come
hit
on
up
the
Mark.
Podcast. We'd love to talk to you.
That'd be sick. Yeah, you should get someone really involved with it on here. That'd be cool.
Because Schnur drops some knowledge about taxes and stuff, but I need to know about Bitcoin.
It's super risky, and I don't really get it, but I think it is interesting. And if you have any like compassion for yourself and your kids, you should probably pay a bit of attention,
right?
Just because it could be the thing that causes, you know, a lot of change.
Sure.
And, you know, a lot of people call out socially about, you know, destroy the systems and, you know, take down the white man system and all that. This is essentially like maybe the next opportunity to do that, where
to give it a little bit more power to the people,
sort of thing. I mean, if you relate it to like the Wall Street bets thing, that's all online. And then until you get the big shots coming in to be like, actually, you think it's you that has control, we can just shut down the trading platform.
Word.
And the secret's not like hidden.
But
they could do that with
specifically though. All those hedge fund managers are just cheese because now these friggin' Redditors are doing what they do for a living.
Right.
And they're just rattled because it's been exposed.
Yeah.
And it's like anyone could do it.
That kind of seems sometimes what crypto feels like for some people, I think.
Sure.
Is like that maybe could be the opportunity that, you know, sets you and your family up if you believe in. Because one thing that I've like quickly grasped with it from my exposure is it's not really like this like Bitcoin, it's a currency, we're going to use it to buy goods. Like that's the bare minimum of what cryptocurrency, blockchain, all this sort of stuff is. So it's very interesting to kind of go even further beyond that sort of thing and consider how it could change systems and procedures. But at the same time, like all it takes is the government to come out and be like, oh yeah, that's illegal. Boom, you're done. Like your Bitcoin
that's
shit.
The thing is that hopefully all these things are a part of this whole new movement where it is this new renaissance and it is this new enlightenment period where we're starting to at least think about like, hey, the monetary system that we're running on doesn't work. And we need to figure out something that's better. And more people are catching on to this. And this cryptocurrency right now is showing us that there are alternative ways. Maybe it's not the perfect way, but there is alternatives.
Yeah.
We're starting to explore those. And people and companies and entities that we respect are starting to go along with all this stuff. Again, even psychedelic stuff. Like a few years ago, this stuff was taboo big time.
Yeah.
And now, again, slowly but surely, we're ticking. Like we're moving the needle towards more enlightenment than closed-mindedness and worrying about just surviving.
Yeah,
we're ascending to that next level in the hierarchy
where
of needs.
Abundance like is for everybody, not just for like.
And we're not, and then but it's a precipice because it could go one way or another.
Yeah,
it could go really dark.
Yeah,
right? And it could go down a place where we just continue down this road. And it's like misusing the psychedelic. It's like taking a bunch of mushrooms and going to a party, and then you have a bad time. You have the power. It's all this.
How you use it.
You can have all this amazing experience with the same thing, but because you're in this weird setting, it sucks.
Yeah.
And it's the same idea that we have all this power as people, but when we're put in the wrong situation, our situations friggin' suck. And I think that hopefully, as we round this corner, again, spiritually and just like as a general population of people and a general consciousness, I feel like something's happening where we can cross that level and not worry about that we're all individuals, realize that we're all one, and again explore inner and outer space together. And as Bill Hicks says, because each are infinite and we're spending so much time closed-minded, closed off on our one planet, in our one country, in our one town, in our one house, in our one mind.
We
Instagram. Don't realize that we're all right. We don't realize that we're all part of the same thing.
Yeah,
and I think
which is being alive and well, and
that's it.
Sharing the experience. And
I think that's a good place to end it.
Ben, here's to using cryptocurrency and other dimensions through psilocybin.
Woo! Yeah, psilocybin is the cryptocurrency of the mind.
The CMP, baby. That's incredible. I like that.
Anyway, everyone, thanks for listening on. That was great. We had a little bit, we got into the crypto at the end. Again, anyone who knows more information, let us know. Please, we want to hear from you guys. Hit us up on Twitter, email us. I want to talk about this shirt I'm wearing today. Hotepli Visions. I don't even know if that's how you say it properly. I followed this guy on Instagram. Super cool. I thought it was appropriate for today to wear this. Anybody who's got cool t-shirts, send them my way. If you email us, we'll give you the address. Double X's. I always wear a different shirt every podcast. If you haven't caught on yet, that's going to be new every time.
Send them
in.
So
if you guys have more, send them in. We just launched a Patreon too, so if you guys love what you're listening to, please support us. There's different tiers available for however you want to contribute to the podcast. And again, like and share, tell your friends, look us up on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere you get your action. Remember to follow my buddy Jack on at by Jack Williams on Instagram and TikTok.
All the above.
The above. Check him out. Love him. Thanks for coming again, buddy.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you soon.
It.
All right. Cheers.
See ya.
Peace.